In the realm of mythology and legend, few figures have captivated the imagination of people around the world like King Arthur. For centuries, his story has been retold and reinterpreted, inspiring countless works of literature, art, and film. But who was the real King Arthur, and what is the historical basis for the legend that has grown up around him? To answer these questions, we must delve into the early medieval historical sources that first mention Arthur, and explore the cultural and literary context in which his legend developed. The earliest surviving references to Arthur can be found in two medieval historical sources, the Annals Cambrii and the Historia Brittonum. These texts, written in the 9th and 10th centuries respectively, provide valuable insights into the historical context in which Arthur is believed to have lived. However, it is essential to note that these sources were written centuries after Arthur's supposed lifetime, and their accounts are often shrouded in myth and legend. As such, historians approach these sources with caution, recognizing that they offer a glimpse into the past, but also reflect the cultural and literary biases of their time. Over time, the legend of King Arthur evolved and expanded, influenced by various cultural and literary traditions. In Welsh mythology, Arthur is often depicted as a great warrior and leader, defending Britain against the invading Anglo-Saxons. However, it was not until the 12th century, with the publication of Geoffrey of Monmouth's Historia Regum Britanniae, that the legend of King Arthur began to take on its familiar shape. Geoffrey's work introduced many of the characters and incidents that are now an integral part of the Arthurian story, including Merlin, Guinevere, and the sword Excalibur. Welsh mythology played a significant role in shaping the legend of King Arthur, with many of the characters and themes that appear in the Arthurian story having their roots in ancient Welsh folklore. The Welsh otherworld, is often associated with Arthur, and his battles against supernatural enemies are a common feature of Welsh mythology. The influence of Welsh mythology can also be seen in the character of Merlin, who is often depicted as a wise and powerful wizard, with connections to the natural world and the spirit realm. The 12th century French writer Chrétien de Troyes is often credited with establishing the genre of Arthurian romance, which became a significant strand of medieval literature. Chrétien's works, such as Eric and Enid and Lancelot, introduced new characters and themes to the Arthurian story, including the character of Lancelot and the quest for the Holy Grail. Chrétien's influence can be seen in the many subsequent adaptations and reinterpretations of the Arthurian legend, which have continued to evolve and expand over the centuries. One of the most iconic and enduring aspects of the Arthurian legend is the Knights of the Round Table, a fellowship of noble warriors who gather around King Arthur to discuss and decide the affairs of the kingdom. The Round Table has become a symbol of chivalry, honor, and camaraderie, and its members, including Sir Lancelot, Sir Gawain, and Sir Percival, are among the most famous and beloved characters in the Arthurian story. However, the historical basis for the Round Table is unclear, and it is likely that it was a literary invention, designed to illustrate the ideals of chivalry and knighthood. The quest for the Holy Grail is one of the most famous and enduring themes in the Arthurian legend, and has been interpreted and reinterpreted in countless ways over the centuries. The Grail, said to be the cup used by Jesus at the Last Supper, is often depicted as a symbol of spiritual quest and enlightenment, and the knights who seek it are seen as embodying the ideals of chivalry and devotion. However, the origins of the Grail legend are unclear, and it is likely that it was influenced by earlier Christian and pagan traditions. According to legend, King Arthur's final battle took place at Camlan, where he faced his nemesis, Mordred, in a fierce and devastating conflict. The battle marked the end of an era, and the downfall of the kingdom of Camelot. The story of Arthur's final days has been retold and reinterpreted in countless ways, with some accounts suggesting that he was mortally wounded in the battle, while others claim that he was taken to the island of Avalon, where he was healed and awaits his return. The mystery surrounding Arthur's fate has only added to the enduring fascination with his legend. Despite the many legends and stories surrounding King Arthur, there is limited archaeological evidence to support the historicity of his existence. However, excavations at sites such as Tintagel and Cadbury Castle have uncovered evidence of human habitation and fortification, which may be linked to the Arthurian legend. The search for archaeological evidence continues, with many scholars and researchers seeking to uncover new insights into the historical context of the Arthurian story. The legend of King Arthur has had a profound impact on Western culture, influencing literature, art, and film for centuries. The ideals of chivalry, honor, and loyalty that are embodied in the Arthurian story have shaped the way we think about leadership, morality, and personal conduct. The legend has also inspired countless adaptations and reinterpretations, from medieval romances to modern fantasy fiction, and continues to captivate audiences around the world. Over the centuries, the legend of King Arthur has evolved and expanded, influenced by various cultural and literary traditions. From the medieval romances of Chrétien de Troyes to the modern fantasy fiction of J.R.R. Tolkien, the Arthurian story has been retold and reinterpreted in countless ways. The legend has also been influenced by historical events, such as the Norman conquest of England, and has been used to justify and critique political and social systems. Despite the many interpretations and reinterpretations of the Arthurian legend, the fascination with King Arthur and his story remains strong. The legend continues to inspire new works of literature, art, and film, and its themes and characters remain a part of our cultural heritage. As we continue to explore and uncover the historical and cultural context of the Arthurian story, we are reminded of the power of myth and legend to shape our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. The search for the real King Arthur may be ongoing, but the legend itself remains an enduring and captivating part of our shared cultural imagination. Our investigation begins with the earliest surviving texts that mention Arthur. The Annals Cambrii, compiled around 900 AD, contains a brief entry for the year 516 recording Arthur's victory at the Battle of Camlan. Just as significantly, the Historia Brittonum, written by the 9th century scholar Nennius, lists 12 battles fought by Arthur against the Saxons. These sources are crucial because they establish Arthur as a historical figure in the minds of early medieval chroniclers, though they were written 3 centuries after the events they describe. Beyond the chronicles, Arthur appears in early Welsh poetry, most notably in Wygodaden, attributed to the 6th century poet Aneurin. This poem celebrates warriors from the north of Britain, and scholars debate whether Arthur is mentioned as a historical leader or as a mythological figure. The poetic tradition reveals how Arthur evolved from a possible historical commander into a cultural symbol, with his name appearing in various forms across medieval Welsh literature. The transformation of Arthur from historical figure to legendary king occurred largely through Geoffrey of Monmouth's 12th century work, Historia Regum Britanniae. Geoffrey, a Welsh cleric, created an expansive narrative that placed Arthur at the center of British royalty. His account introduced key elements now synonymous with the legend: Arthur's father Uther Pendragon, the wizard Merlin, the sword Excalibur, and the court at Camelot. While clearly fictional to modern readers, Geoffrey's work became the foundation for centuries of Arthurian romance. Geoffrey's work established what scholars call the Matter of Britain, a collection of medieval romances centered on Arthur and his court. These stories, written in Latin, French, and English, expanded the legend with characters like Lancelot, Guinevere, and the Holy Grail. The narrative focus often shifted from Arthur himself to his knights, creating a rich tapestry of chivalric romance. This literary tradition flourished from the 12th through 15th centuries, ensuring Arthur's enduring popularity across medieval Europe. Archaeologists have excavated sites across Britain dating to the 5th and 6th centuries, the period traditionally associated with Arthur's reign. These excavations reveal a society in transition following the Roman withdrawal. Settlements show evidence of Anglo-Saxon migration, while hill forts and baths suggest defensive strategies against invaders. The material culture from this period includes distinctive weapon types and burial practices that hint at the conflicts described in the early Arthurian sources. Metal detectorists and archaeologists have recovered numerous weapons from 5th and 6th century contexts, including swords, spearheads, and shield bosses. Many of these artifacts display craftsmanship associated with Roman and early medieval Britain. The distribution of such weapons, particularly in western Britain and Wales, suggests military activity in these regions during the supposed Arthurian period. However, no single weapon has been definitively linked to Arthur himself, as the practice of naming artifacts after legendary figures was common. The coastal site of Tintagel in Cornwall has yielded remarkable discoveries dating to the late 6th century. Excavations revealed a large complex of buildings with continental connections, including imports from the Merovingian period in France. Among the finds were carved stones and pottery that suggest a sophisticated settlement. While some have speculated about connections to Arthur's legendary birth at Tintagel, the site represents a genuine historical location rather than archaeological proof of the specific legendary events. Grave goods from the post-Roman period provide insight into the social structure of 5th and 6th century Britain. Elite burials often contain weapons, ornate jewelry, and imported goods, indicating a warrior aristocracy. These finds help contextualize the military leader described in early Arthurian texts. The presence of both Roman and Germanic influences in these graves reflects the complex cultural landscape of early medieval Britain, where traditional British identity merged with continental elements. The names of locations across Britain contain elements that may relate to Arthurian tradition. Sites such as Glastonbury, Cameliard, and various castles bear names that scholars have linked to Arthurian legend. While these place names often derive from much earlier Celtic origins, their persistence suggests how deeply the Arthurian story became embedded in British geography. The identification of Camlann, Arthur's final battle site, remains debated among historians and archaeologists. In 1190, Glastonbury Abbey announced the discovery of King Arthur's tomb, complete with a lead sarcophagus inscribed with Arthur, son of Uther, King of the Britons. While the abbey's records may have been embellished for fundraising purposes, the site has yielded significant archaeological evidence. Excavations revealed medieval structures and artifacts that confirm the abbey's importance as a religious center. Whether these finds relate to the legendary Arthur or represent later medieval commemoration remains uncertain. Contemporary historians approach the Arthurian question with careful distinction between historical possibility and legendary development. Most scholars agree that while no contemporary records confirm Arthur's existence, the stories may preserve memories of real military leaders from the post-Roman period. The persistence of Arthurian themes across centuries suggests he represents a cultural archetype rather than a specific individual. This scholarly consensus acknowledges the legend's power while maintaining rigorous standards of historical evidence. The search for the real King Arthur reveals more about how history transforms into legend than about any single individual. The early Welsh sources, medieval romances, and archaeological evidence each contribute pieces to a complex puzzle. Whether Arthur was a composite of several leaders, a mythical personification of British resistance, or a genuine historical figure remains unknowable. What is certain is that the Arthurian tradition has shaped British identity for over a millennium, proving that the power of story often transcends the boundaries of historical fact. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more real mysteries and discoveries.